What happened last night at the Three Gorges Dam was not a routine engineering decision, and it was certainly not a calm, controlled flood management operation. It was a signal, sharp, sudden, and deeply unsettling. After days of relentless rainfall upstream and a Yangtze River pushed to its limits, authorities made a move that has rarely been seen in recent years. All 11 spillway gates were opened simultaneously. This was the largest hydroelectric dam on Earth, a project long promoted as a symbol of human mastery over nature, abruptly forced into a full-scale emergency release. No press conference could have conveyed the gravity of that moment as clearly as the water itself did. Downstream, the impact arrived with terrifying speed. Streets that had been alive with traffic and evening lights were erased under violent brown torrents, or entire neighborhoods disappeared beneath the surface, with only fragments of rooftops and floating debris marking where homes once stood. Bridges, once celebrated as icons of stability and progress, were torn apart, leaving rivers that could no longer be crossed and communities suddenly isolated. For many residents, there was no warning siren, no clear evacuation order. In the dead of night, families woke to water rushing through doorways, forcing them to flee in panic, carrying children on their backs, dragging elderly parents by the arm, grabbing whatever they could before the current claimed everything else. Some climbed onto rooftops, waving flashlights into the darkness, hoping rescue teams might see them in time. Others tied doors, planks, and plastic barrels together, improvising rafts in water thick with debris. Power outages plunged entire districts into blackness. Mobile signals failed. Countless people were cut off from relatives, neighbors, and emergency services. For some, the flood was not just a loss of property. It was the last moment they would ever be seen alive. This catastrophe forces a question that authorities would rather not answer openly. Why would a dam built to control floods be pushed to unleash such an overwhelming volume of water? The uncomfortable possibility is that the structure itself was under severe strain. Engineers have warned for years that when reservoir levels rise too quickly, while upstream inflows remain uncontrollable, the margin for safety narrows dramatically. At that point, operators are left with only two choices: release water downstream, or risk catastrophic failure at the dam itself. And neither option is safe. One sacrifices downstream communities, the other risks an event that would redefine disaster on a continental scale. If the Three Gorges Dam were ever to fail, the consequences would be almost unimaginable. A wall of water tens of meters high could race downstream along the Yangtze River, overwhelming cities in sequence. From Yichang to Wuhan, from Hubei's industrial heartland, toward the densely populated lower reaches near Shanghai, tens of millions of lives would be placed in immediate danger. Highways, high-speed rail lines, airports, power stations, and industrial zones could be wiped out in a matter of hours. The national power grid could fracture, plunging vast regions into darkness. Hospitals would struggle to function, food distribution, clean water systems, and logistics networks could collapse simultaneously. Seen in this context, opening all 11 spillway gates was not merely a technical adjustment. It looked like an act of desperation, a silent acknowledgement that the dam was facing pressures beyond what official narratives are willing to admit. Yet the burden of that decision was shifted downstream onto ordinary people with no warning and no voice in the process. They are the ones watching their homes dissolve into muddy currents, their livelihoods swept away, their lives permanently altered overnight. The human cost is written everywhere in the aftermath. Classrooms were thrown into chaos as lessons were abruptly halted and children rushed out, unsure if they would ever return to those buildings. Elderly residents, too slow to escape the sudden surge, vanished quietly beneath the water. Workers, farmers, and small shop owners, people who spent decades building modest lives, found themselves clinging to rooftops, fishing boats, broken furniture, or drifting doors, bargaining with fate for just one more hour of survival. Few scenes are more haunting than a mother standing on a rooftop, clutching her child as muddy water roars below, her voice trembling as she pleads for help. Few sounds are more chilling than cries echoing through the night from people trapped in darkness, beyond the reach of rescuers. And few responses are more infuriating than what followed. Official silence, no advance warnings, no public acknowledgement of error, no one stepping forward to accept responsibility for lives torn apart in a single night. The outlook offers little comfort. Our weather forecasts point to continued heavy rainfall upstream, raising the possibility of even more emergency discharges. Each additional release places new towns and cities at risk, expanding the zone of destruction and deepening the humanitarian toll. Even if the dam itself remains intact, the damage already unleashed rivals that of a major regional disaster. Yet state media coverage remains muted and carefully controlled, as if limiting information could somehow contain the floodwaters themselves. In reality, the clearest record of what is happening does not come from official briefings, but from social media. Shaking phone cameras capture submerged streets, collapsed homes, and exhausted faces. Voices break as people document ruined neighborhoods and unanswered calls for help. These unfiltered clips have become the only lifeline connecting victims to the outside world, and the only way the scale of the disaster can be understood beyond carefully edited reports. Adding to global concern are satellite images circulating online, including those viewed through widely available mapping platforms. Observers have pointed to subtle but visible deformation along the dam's axis, where a structure once portrayed as perfectly straight appears slightly curved. Engineers outside China argue that in a megadam of this scale, even small distortions matter. Uneven stress distribution under immense water pressure can accelerate fatigue in concrete and steel reinforcements. The danger is not necessarily sudden collapse, but slow, accumulating damage, the kind that remains hidden until it is too late to reverse. There have also been reports of cracking near spillway and discharge gates. While officials describe these as superficial, independent experts caution that such areas endure extreme stress from pressure fluctuations, vibration, and thermal changes. During flood season, these forces intensify. Water seeping into microcracks can weaken internal structures invisibly. By the time damage becomes undeniable, the opportunity for preventive action may already be gone. In dam engineering, transparency is a safety measure. Secrecy, by contrast, breeds mistrust. Critics also question the dam's operating strategy during extreme weather. Repeated emergency discharges send sudden surges downstream, overwhelming cities and rural communities alike. Villages that stood for generations can be erased in hours. Farmland is buried under silt, homes collapse, and livelihoods disappear overnight. To those affected, it feels less like flood control and more like being sacrificed to protect the structure upstream. These concerns are not new. Decades ago, the renowned Chinese hydrologist Huang Wanli warned that the Three Gorges project underestimated sediment accumulation, geological instability, and extreme hydrological variability. He cautioned that deformation, cracking, and uncontrollable flood pressure were not distant hypotheticals, but inevitable risks. His warnings were dismissed, and he paid a heavy personal price for opposing the project. Today, as satellite imagery and flood events raise fresh alarms, his predictions resonate with unsettling clarity. The Three Gorges Dam now stands as both a monument to human ambition and a symbol of unresolved risk. Technology did not eliminate uncertainty, it merely delayed its reckoning. When warnings are ignored and dissent is silenced, nature becomes the final auditor. The real question is no longer how much power the dam can generate, but how much strain it can endure, and how many people will pay the price for maintaining the illusion of control. What we are witnessing is more than a flood. It is a stress test of human endurance, of social responsibility, and of whether human life truly comes before image and control. The dam was built in the name of protection, yet it has become a source of fear. History shows that megastructures rarely fail from force alone. They fail from overconfidence, from ignored warnings, and from the refusal to confront inconvenient truths. When that happens, it is never the decision-makers who suffer first. It is ordinary people, losing their homes, their futures, and sometimes their lives. The risks surrounding the Three Gorges Dam can no longer be brushed aside as distant or hypothetical. Structural concerns, reported cracking, and increasingly aggressive flood releases all point to a system operating under extraordinary pressure. Even without a full collapse, the humanitarian damage from repeated emergency discharges is already immense and irreversible. How these risks are addressed, or concealed, will determine whether this dam remains a safeguard or becomes one of the most devastating man-made disasters in modern history. This story deserves to travel beyond the floodwaters. Share it so the world can see what millions are enduring in silence. Stay informed, stay alert, and remember, this is not just a story about concrete and steel, it is about people. And in moments of deep darkness, even one shared truth can become a lifeline. In conclusion, the risks surrounding the Three Gorges Dam can no longer be treated as distant or hypothetical. Repeated emergency discharges, extreme water pressure, and persistent structural concerns suggest the system is operating dangerously close to its limits. Even without a total collapse, every large-scale release transfers risk downstream, turning millions of ordinary people into a buffer zone for structural survival. Public trust erodes when warnings are opaque and human lives appear secondary to image and control. History shows that megastructures rarely fail in a single moment. They fail through accumulated strain, ignored signals, and delayed accountability. Nature does not respond to propaganda or political reassurance. Without transparency, independent oversight, and a fundamental shift in risk management, the Three Gorges Dam risks becoming not a symbol of protection, but one of the most consequential man-made disasters of the modern era.